A sample video that's going to demonstrate how to use a switch statement. And a switch statement really isn't used a lot in our class, and the main reason why is that a switch statement is nothing but an if-else structure, but it's a fairly limited one. In other words, you can't do greater than, less than type situation. You can only do equal to, or it's the same. And so what I've done is I put together a little sample here with a short little menu. The menu is an example of where a switch statement might be used, where I'm printing out press 1 for option 1, press 2 for option 2, or press 3 for option 3, and I have a blank line. Then I asked the user to enter their choice, and I did input, and I did a scan.nextInt. So I'm expecting the user to enter 1, 2, or 3. All right. After I get that input, I'm going to switch based on the input. And in the case of 1, I'm going to print out option 1. In the case of 2, I'm going to print out option 2. In the case of 3, I'm going to print out option 3. And if you don't enter 1, 2, or 3, I'm going to use the default and say invalid input. Now, those of you who've done this unit recognize that I've made a mistake here. So I want to demonstrate the mistake, and then I'll show you how to fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and run my code, and you can see over here in my console, and I'm sorry if the text is really small, but notice that it printed out my menu 1, 2, and 3, and it asked me to enter my choice. And I'll go ahead and enter number 1, so I would expect it to print out option 1. But when I press 1 and enter, I see option 1, option 2, option 3, and invalid input. I'm seeing all of the options. And the reason why is that in a switch statement, if you don't put a break in between each case, it will just start and run to the bottom. So if I put in a 2, it would have started with option 2 and then listed 3 an invalid input. So what I have to do here is I have to go in and put in the keyword break after each of the print lines. Now, there are situations where you'd want it to do more than one thing, in which case you can leave the break out and it would automatically, group things together. But for the most part, we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to just put a break statement between each one. Now, when I save this and I run it and I enter my option and I say option 1, it only printed option 1. And if I ran it again and I pressed 2, it would only print 2. If I put in number 47, it would automatically go in there. If I didn't enter a number, I'd get an error and it would crash the whole program. So we don't want to go there. Let's just stick with the numbers. All right. You don't have to use an integer. What I could do is I could come up here and I could say I want to use a string. All right. And so my input now is going to be a string. And so instead of inputting an int, I have to say next line. And now I have my input as a string. And my case is not a number, right? It's a string number. And so I have to put quotes around my 1 and my 2 and my 3 because these are now strings. All right? But it will work exactly the same way if I save this and I run it. Okay, when I come up here, I'm not entering the number 2, I'm entering the character 2. And it read it as a string. Now, a string obviously could be a word. I could have said option 1 or whatever. But a string allows me to use multiple letters for the answer. All right, and the third way is I could use our character. Remember our char? All right, so I can come up here and I can create a char, if I can type. There we go. We have a char for input. However, when I input, there's no way to input a char. All right, so what I have to have is I'm going to have a string for my input, and I'll say input 2. All right, and then what I will do is I will convert the string input and grab just the first character and put that in my char. So I'll say my input is input 2. All right, I'm scanning for that line. All right, now I don't know if the user is going to type it in upper or lowercase letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say input 2 equals input 2 dot 2 uppercase. All right, and so now when I do my input, that first letter, okay, and I can come up here and say I'm going to put this as letter A, B, and letter C. All right, now my input, they can input a lowercase letter, whatever they want, but it's going to grab it and make it uppercase with the input. And then the last thing I want to do is I'm going to say I need to get that input equals my input2 dot char at. In other words, I want to know what is the character at 0. Right? So if I enter a whole bunch of letters, like if I type that whole thing out of there, it's only going to grab the A. It's only going to grab the B. All right? And because I said 2 uppercase, anything I enter will be in an uppercase letter. And now I can come down here, and a character is just a single quote. So there's my single quote. What am I doing? Okay, sorry about that. All right, an A, single quote, and a B, a single quote, and a C. And this time you can see now I have a character input. I'm switching based on a character. And so I'll go ahead and save it. And now I'll run it. All right, my same things. I'll put in a 3. It gives me invalid input because 3 is not valid. It has to be C. Sorry about that. And I'll put a lowercase c just to show you that it will work. And there, notice that a lowercase c worked and an uppercase C because I changed it to uppercase. All right, so that's a sample of a switch statement. Fairly simple. You just have to create a case for every possible option that you might want someone to enter. You can't use doubles because decimals just aren't stored that way. So you can't put a double in there. There's no exactness on a double. You could get errors. So the only 3 types are really ints, which are highly recommended. All right, and then the second one would be a char, and the third one would be a string.